The Profile. You're listening to Premier Christian Radio.
Hello and welcome to The Profile here on Premier Christian Radio. My name is Sam Hales. I'm the editor of Premier Christianity magazine. That is the UK's leading Christian magazine, and each month we features interviews just like the one you're about to hear. We publish reviews, features, and so much more. We've got some fantastic regular columnists for you as well, including Jeff Lucas, Chinny MacDonald, and Wren Collective's Chris Llewellyn. So for all that great content and more, why not check out one of our subscription offers? You can get the magazine for as little as £3.95 an issue right now at premierchristianity.com. You have joined us this afternoon on Premier Christian Radio for a special edition of The Profile, because we're speaking today to the man the BBC described as a drug dealer turned lifesaver during COVID. At the height of the pandemic in 2020, millions of people watched Pastor Mick Flemming feed and clothe the poor in Burnley. Pastor Mick Flemming's appearance on BBC News resulted in more than £250,000 worth of donations from people across the nation, not just Christians, who were inspired by Pastor Mick's generosity and determination to help all those in need at the height of the COVID pandemic. Pastor Mick's testimony was printed on the BBC News website, and his incredible stories of ministering not just to, but ministering with some of the most deprived communities in the Northwest has received national attention. So this week, Premier Christianity's deputy editor, Megan Cornwell, spoke to Mick, who heads up the Church on the Street Ministries. And Megan wanted to hear the stories of the homeless and addicted being helped, the story of Pastor Mick and how he was able to forgive the man who abused him. She wanted to hear all the stories of what God is doing through his ministry, and today you will hear those stories in Mick's own words. You'll also hear how he's coped with criticism, including criticism from other Christians. And you'll also discover how he's managed to avoid feeling burnt out and overwhelmed by the depth of the need in his local area. What keeps him going? What keeps him motivated? You'll find out today. But before we begin, this interview does contain a reference to abuse, and so listener discretion is advised. And if you are affected by any of the themes raised in this interview, you can call Premier Lifeline, the National Christian Helpline, on 0300 111 0101. That's 0300 111 0101. The interview you're about to hear was originally recorded as part of research for a future feature in Premier Christianity magazine, but it was so good we wanted you to hear it now rather than to wait. And so the quality of the audio recording is slightly diminished from what you may be used to, but we believe Pastor Mick's story is worth hearing and will bless you today. Megan Cornwell started by asking Pastor Mick what the needs are in his part of Burnley.
Well, it's a mixture really. So we have there's people from the addicted community, homeless community, families who are just poor. We have older people. So the age groups really vary from teenagers to old age pensioners. So I would say it's a deprived community, but a community that comes together to help to lift each other up. So the need is great, but we hold each other up. So theologically, it's the perfect church for me. The money side doesn't matter. It's people that have sharing with the have-nots on an equal basis, and that makes it kind of almost like the Book of Acts. It kind of blows my mind sometimes when we kind of see how it works. But it's very scriptural, I think, but not by design, but just by going out, and that's what gets created around you. It seems to be scripture coming to life, really.
That's amazing. It's funny you say that, because I was just thinking to myself the other day, I live in quite a well-off area, and I was just thinking to myself, what would it look like if we were that kind of church, if you know, when it talks about that idea of having everything in common.
So we have people who are very wealthy that come here as well, but we don't take money off anybody. So we do a collection on Sunday, which doesn't get much because it's not a wealthy church, even though we have we have a few people who are wealthy, don't get me wrong. But so we do hot food every day. We're open 7 days a week. We have a clothes bank, we have showers, we have a food bank, we have mental health workers with the NHS work with us, drug and alcohol services work out of our building, an NHS doctor. We have all that stuff. We have our own paid staff. We have a counsellor, mental health counsellor as well that we pay. Nowhere that you can come in and put your money in. So what happens is the bacon sandwiches, the hot meals every day are all free. The coffee, endless tea, coffee, hot chocolate out of a machine is all free. The showers are free. The counsellor is free. The washers and the dryers are free. So people come and sit down and the homeless guy can buy the pilot a brew, and that's what he does. And that's how we do it. We don't take money. We don't want money. We want that dynamic. We trust God. So if we've no money for the food bank, we don't advertise on Facebook with no food. What we do is clear the shelves and pray and watch them get filled back up. That's how we do it, and it works. And that's the principle that we're building everything on, everything that we do, and that's how we do it, and that's what works, and that's why we see so many miraculous things, miracles every day.
Do you want to share some? Do you want to give me just one example of some of the miracles you're talking about?
Blimey, I could go on and on, really. I mean, it's like, one would be last week with no food. So let's push everything to one side and pray. And there's people saying, oh, what are we going to do? We know you have to go and buy it. You have to do this. We'll have to do that. We'll have to do that. So just push the food we've got together, pushed it all together, and I just went in and just said, Lord, fill the shelves in Jesus' name, amen. And in 5 minutes, I had a phone call, and a guy came up from London with £2,000 worth of food for us, drove all the way up from London and put it back on the shelves. Phil, that's one. We had a guy come in, and he come in to see me. He's quite poorly. He has got some mental health issues, and he hadn't seen his mum for years and years and years. And he come and he sat in my office, and he just cried and cried and cried. I said, look, what is it you need? He said, oh, it's impossible. I said, no, nothing's impossible. I'll ask Jesus. You tell me what you need, and I'll ask him. I said, and he'll give it. I know he will. He said, I haven't seen my mum for years. I just want to see my mum. I want to put my arms around my mum. So I said, right, that's okay. I said, I'll just ask Jesus now. So I put my arms around him and I prayed for him. I said, Lord, just send his mum. Just let him put his arms around her. In Jesus' name, Lord, we know that's done. That love that you've got, just send her. And I walked out the office to get him a brew. And there's a lady stood at reception. And she said, have you seen my son? I said, what's your son called? So she told me, I said, yeah, he's in my office. She said, she's never been before. She don't know anything about us. She said, I had a dream last night to come here and I'd find him here. And I thought, wow, regardless of my prayer, God had already done the work before I'd asked. And she walked in and I fetched him into the office and he broke down, started crying his eyes out. They put their arms around each other and he said, how did you know? How could you do that? What's that? I said, I didn't. It's Jesus. So I could go on and on and on and on and on. It's a daily thing, but it's not by our choice. We're not sort of saying, right, we are going to be supernatural.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that we're going to trust God. So we don't ask people for stuff or things. We ask God, because if tomorrow I'm back outside on my own outside McDonald's with a few flasks and a packet of fags, that's all right as well. Because that's where so I'll be all right as well. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. We're not trying to gain anything. We're just trying to follow God, follow the Spirit of God, and let him go first and we'll follow. So
just sounds amazing.
It is. It truly is. So I just had a conversation today. So we'll get some people in the church. We're not discipling enough, and we're not doing that. We're not doing that. What does discipleship look like then? And they're thinking in old systematic ways. And I said that has to change. I said because I see loads of discipleship. I said, because I let them disciple me. I said, the problem is you think you're going to stand above them and disciple them and tell them what and how they should believe. I said, instead of letting them tell you where they're at and digesting that. And I'm discipling so many people because they're discipling me. It's a two-way street, and that's what kind of gets missed. So, but I won't allow that. I don't allow, we're not going to do a course and sit down and tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing, because it won't work for our guys, because they've been told and preached to all their life. They need love and care, and they need to be met where they're at, because there's so much to give. And that's what we do. You know, we kind of, but it's hard to break the thinking in some of the maturer Christians, ways they've done this. No, we've always done it like that, have you? Well, you're not doing it here. If you don't like it, go to another church. I don't actually mind. In fact, I don't care whether you go to another church or not, because people that need to be here will be the right ones, because they're suffering, they're dying, and we want to minister to the dying, you know, give them a chance to live. It is breaking the mold, but it's more, I think, a bit more like first century Christianity, if I dare say that. So in respect of, we believe what the Bible says. So I don't mean, if you're gay, you can't come in and you're naughty and evil. I mean, we believe what it says, as in love one another, care for one another, welcome everyone into that community, show the love and compassion of Jesus, and let him do the rest. You know, I don't need to say who can and can't come in, and I need to love them and care for them. And God will point that out to them and do the changing. I just love them in it and change myself with my interaction with them. And that's the basis that we're doing. We're not looking at right and wrong. We're looking at Jesus Christ. He'll sort that out in the individual, won't I? So that's what we're trying to do anyway.
Mick, can you explain some of the ways in which the pandemic has negatively affected your community? Yeah,
so he's drove the community deeper into poverty. So at the first, it was about distribution of food, really. So it was about getting stuff out there, because people couldn't get things. So we tackled that. So we were just running around. I was personally running around like a lunatic, kind of getting food parcels out in a van and and working silly hours. But I knew that weren't sustainable. So we needed a structure to be built and kind of around that. So it wasn't the lack of money, it was the lack of getting the resource to where it needed to be initially. But what happened with the pandemic, everybody withdrew. So the first 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, all the organisations that had been working on the ground and doing stuff, the churches and secular organisations, completely disappeared. And there was nothing. So that's when we stepped up. I went out and stepped up, and I kind of split the town into areas, and I'd get hot food and food wrapped, leave it in these areas and put it out on social media and through word of mouth that there'll be food in certain places at certain times, and went from that. And then also what we started to see was people weren't lacking money because they couldn't spend it. They were struggling to spend it. But what started to happen was we started to see alcoholism increase, go through the roof, especially in the middle classes. So we started to see middle class people needing our help, because we work specifically around many different areas, but we're very successful around addiction, getting people out of addiction. Really highly, you know, we kind of, our outcomes are really high, far higher than the drug and alcohol services and things like that, or any Christian organisation that I know of. They're really high success rates. So we started to see more and more middle class people falling in, crossing this invisible line into alcoholism. Then we've seen the surge in drugs. So certain drugs were very difficult to get into the area because of county lines and things like that. But it was like travelling, it was more difficult. So you weren't seeing the drugs landing like they used to. So other drugs that were more local started to take us. There's more spice now. So the type of drugs have changed in the pandemic. So we're seeing spice epidemics. We're seeing more people growing cannabis, growing their own cannabis, and more cannabis farms. So it's kind of more localized. That's gone through the roof. And the big one, the real big one, is the mental health. So people's mental health have spiraled out of control for many, many different reasons. It's probably all of the above that I've spoke about, but we're seeing far, far more suicides. So we do a lot of funerals and things like that. Well, I do. So a lot of people taking their own lives.
How many would you say roughly? Like, would you have an idea, kind of?
A year ago in Burnley, in the pandemic, if you lived in Burnley, and these are tried and tested figures because the BBC got the statistics from Manchester University. So I'd contacted the BBC saying, I'm falling over the bodies here. Something's really bad, something's happening. And it wasn't COVID deaths, it was death. And I'm doing funerals, and I could see the undertakers were having to hire extra cars in and stuff. And I thought, I've never seen all like this. So anyway, it turns out, so these were all the statistics for a year ago. If you lived in Burnley, you were 60% more likely to die than anywhere else in the country. So that tells you there's a direct link between death and poverty. So
And that's not just of COVID, that's just dying in general.
That's deaths. Deaths per se was 60% higher in Burnley than anywhere else in the country. So on the back of that, you see the church has developed into, we have professional mental health workers. So we've got counsellors. So we've got the NHS partnering with us. So, and also I'm evangelising in respect of how we do what we do in the way I've told you to all the secular organisations that come in. So I'm not compromising. If they want to come in here, they have to fit in with us, not the other way around. Good. So the conversation is with the NHS is, don't worry if I just go into spontaneous prayer anytime, because I will. And if I do, don't take it personally. It's up to you. But it's kind of, so what we're saying is we'll work with you, but you have to work. You're working in our building. We're a church, so we're not compromising. And it's working really well. It's working really well because the outcomes are far better because you've got the physical stuff that the NHS are doing, but we've got the spiritual support that goes with all that. So it complements it. So people get extra care and extra help. So therefore the outcomes are going to be far better.
Was that something you were doing, Mick, before the pandemic, working with the mental health teams, or is this a new development?
Well, yeah. So working with the mental health teams is a new development, and it's come from the need. So what we were doing was we were trying to, we would be constantly trying to get people into the crisis teams and making phone calls and stuff, and we were getting nowhere, just like everybody else. But now we've got them in here. So we take that, we get everything that we do. I'm looking for fast response. So I'm not looking for 6 months down the line. I'm looking crisis response in everything we do, whether that's food, showers, clothing, food bank, hot food, mental health, counselling. Don't have to wait. You're going to get it now as quick as possible. So that's the agenda I have. In the church, and that's a church. So the church looks different to any church you'll see anywhere in the world, to be honest with you. But my job is to keep it a church. So how I justify that and how I hold that together is, if you can imagine that monasteries were invented tomorrow, just invented a monastery tomorrow, it'd look like this church. That's what it'd look like, apart from the sleep-ins. So the educational stuff, the physical stuff, having a wash, getting the medical care that you need, getting the food, being nursed back to health, helping people with addiction and drink and drugs and all the things that a monastery would have done. That's what we do. And right through the center of it is Christ. And the beauty, the thing that's even better than that is that the secular organizations come to us and we give them the gospel message in the work that we're doing. So they get affected by the gospel as well. So it's a win-win. And if they want to interact with the people that they're getting funding for, this is drug and alcohol services, probation, they have to come to us. They don't have any choice, so they have to come to us, and we are not prepared to compromise on our faith. You know, there's no good feeling preaching. It's just plain and simple. The gospel of Jesus Christ can be separated from your sin because you're written off, and I'm going to tell you what you are. And the truth is, you can get a great joy out of it, and you're going to be set free from your sin. I've got a story to tell you. Come and listen to me. And it's the same story every week, just told in different ways.
Tell me about your role as the minister and how it's changed over the pandemic, Mick. When you said you were running around like a headless chicken trying to get food to people, what did your working day look like before the pandemic and after?
So before the pandemic, I'd set the ministry up, and I was working part-time. So I was working kind of at a university, a Christian university, 2 days a week, and then the ministry 5 days a week, to sustain myself financially, really, to be honest with you. I was trying to get the ministry going. Once the pandemic hit, the hours where I'm doing 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, for probably 6 to 12 months. But what happened as I was doing it, I knew that it weren't sustainable as I was doing it, but I was building a ministry and a church within it. So when the church is shut, I was preaching on car parks, or preaching under bridges, preaching on Tesco's car park. The police come and swooped and tried to arrest me, but I had food provision at the church meeting, so they couldn't arrest me because I'd done my job. You couldn't stop food supply during a pandemic, so we're preaching with bags of shopping in the back of the van and giving them out at the end of the service. So I knew what I was doing, and I was protected, so they couldn't arrest me. And you know, it started to grow. I didn't break any laws. I followed every single rule. It was building a ministry by default, almost by the nature of the sadness of what was happening. There was amazing things happening. You know, we're seeing God instances just arising all the time, and support, and people wanting to get alongside. So I went from a church. So our church was in. I set the church up with 20 quid because we could get. We hired a community centre, and it was 20 quid to hire it on a Sunday. So that's where we used to do it. But then the pandemic hits, and we could only have 12 people in the space or something instead of 50 or whatever it were then. So we had to be outside anyway. So we were working outside. We had no building, and we were just constantly preaching on car parks on a Sunday, and then having to move from car park to car park because the law changed. It was if it was a private car park, I could do it. If it was a public car park, I couldn't do it. So I had to sit in with the law. So we'd move around to different places and what have you. But we never stopped. You know, we never stopped. And the whole idea was the combination of the physical support and the spiritual support, and a definite balance of both, you know, being very, very important. So we got lots of people with lots of need coming to us, and then hearing the gospel, and the life starting to get changed. So we started to see profound changes in people, and especially around addiction and things like that. Started to see so many people coming and asking questions. So yeah, and then we found a building. So what happened with the building was that I couldn't find a building that was big enough that I could afford. So I decided to look at buildings that I couldn't afford. So that's what I did. I made appointments to look at buildings that I could not afford, and I could nowhere near afford. I thought it'll have to be at least double the amount that we can afford, so that way I'll know it's God. Because nobody's going to take. So I went to look at somewhere that was the building we have now. I think it was £60,000 a year rent, and I had 20. So I thought that's fine. If I can get it for 20, it's God. So I bid, and I got it, for 20, and that's the building that we work out of now. So it was looking at the impossible because I knew God could do it. So we got the space that we needed and the facility that we needed and the money we could afford. So I don't look at what's possible or what you should be doing. You can't go there and you can't ask him and you can't do that and you can't do that. Well, no, you can. You have to ask God. Of course you can. You can do anything. God can do anything. So that's what we did. So that's how we got the building we've got now. So we were able to, during the pandemic, they start to get this place fit for purpose that it's doing now, the work that we wanted it to do. So, and I think because of the BBC, we got people still stop. Never asked anybody for money. We ended up on the BBC because they'd seen me selling some. They saw me on Facebook selling. They were like somebody donated some women's creams, like face creams and stuff. So I was like, I'm a bit of a Del boy, really. That's what I was always. So I'd have plastic bags and I'm putting them in. I don't want a 10. I don't want to. And I sold them on Fiverr for. I set this thing up called Sax Appeal, and it's. No, see what I did there. It was shoes and coats for kids. So we needed, when they went back to school, we needed new shoes and coats for kids. So I called it Sax Appeal, shoes and coats for kids. And the BBC saw me doing this, and they came and they followed us, and we got the support out of that, and that allowed us to do this building up. So I thought it would have been a 5 or 10 year plan to get this building to where it is now, and we did it within like 6 months, really, because we had the money. So that was pretty much a miracle, really.
Do you feel inner conflict between truth and lies, the way of Christianity and the way of the world? If so, it's time to live no lies. With huge spiritual insight, New York Times bestseller John Mark Comer guides us into recognizing and resisting the lies that rob us of peace and freedom. Live No Lies. Yours free when you take out an annual subscription to Premier Christianity magazine. Subscribe at premierchristianity.com.
Can you tell me a bit more about some of the challenges that you've faced, Mick, in terms of your workload, challenges that you've had during the pandemic? Dealing with all. Have you felt burdened at times in terms of the need and in terms of the expectations on you as the leader?
I think that it's tough to say, but the biggest critics have been other Christians, really, and they're the ones that have really tried to pull me down, really. I find it really sad, really. It still upsets me now. So it's been being called a social worker, not really a Christian. Blah blah blah, because you're just doing good stuff, but that's not the case. I'm driven by my faith, not from anything else. I'm not Bible centered, which I am. I don't do anything with that. So I've had a lot of Christians and churches, high profile churches as well, kind of really criticize me personally.
In emails, on social media?
Yeah, social media, and even through emails and things like that, questioning my faith and all sorts of stuff. But from Christians, so that was hard at first, because I thought, I'm just trying to do what God's called me to do. I don't understand. But now it's not hard anymore. It's for me, it's a different theology that they're following. My theology is a lot different. So I call my theology 2 cup of coffee theology, and that's how it is. It's like, don't buy someone a cup of coffee that's sat outside begging and walk away and think you've done something good. Buy 2 and sit down with them and get alongside them. And it's the act of giving and receiving at the same time, and talking about Jesus in that transaction that is everything. It's everything now. And the people that do criticize and stuff like that, they don't understand my theology or how I see God, because I believe what the Bible says. When I was hungry, you fed me. I don't think that's just something that you can cop out of. I think that's real and truthful. Like in Galatians 2, when Paul says he went up to Jerusalem and the apostles said, and don't forget the poor. I think it's integral, absolutely integral to the gospel, and it's the good news for the poor, because it makes me know I'm poor, my own need for God. And that's what gets missed. And I think the people that's criticised us and stuff, they don't understand their own need for God. You know, I've only been ordained for 2 years, and I haven't been a Christian that long on the scale of things. I'd only just finished my theology degree, to be honest with you. And I thought that all Christians had this love thing inside them that I felt were inside me. And when I found out they didn't, I was a bit devastated, really. But so it took me, because I came late to faith, you see, so it's took me a long time to understand that, of course, we're all sinful, and we all need each other, and it's how we come together. So I'm so used to being criticised. I've never been as loved as much and hated as much as this last year.
Yeah. Wow.
So that has been the hardest part. It's had the opposite effect, really, because the more that's happened, the more God's lifted me up, and the higher profile I've become is not because of anything I've done, it's what God's doing. There's kind of raised that profile. I haven't tried to do anything, I just do my job.
It just reminds me of that story in the Bible. I've always been touched by this story where I think it's the sinful woman, and Jesus says, those who have been forgiven much love much.
I think
and
so.
I often think that with my own life and others, I feel that people who've done some bad things, who've been there, and the kind of maybe they feel more love than God gives that to them because they've been forgiven a lot of sins.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I definitely feel like that. It allows you to accept the grace that God wants you to have. I helped this this alcoholic, found him in McDonald's years ago, and he was drunk, and I helped him to get sober, and he got his family back, and he got his life back. He came to know Jesus and everything, and he died 2 years later, but sober. And I never told him, and he didn't know, but he was the man that raped me when I was 11. It changed my life. I got such a peace. I'm no longer a victim. I'm forgiven, and I'm free. And why should I live in his sin? It didn't belong to me. And it's that's transformed my life.
Wow.
That's stuff that sort of drives the ministry that we do. So, the criticism and getting hammered for you feel like you haven't done anything wrong. That was a hard part in the pandemic. The long hours weren't too bad. The deaths have took a toll on me. So many deaths, because I got to know the people personally, especially the suicides. And then, I'd have people ringing you up, leaving messages on your phone and saying, if you don't answer your phone, I'm going to kill myself. And they haven't answered my phone, and they kill themselves. I don't feel guilt at all, because I know I can't do anything about it, and I know I'm not God. But it has had a big effect on me. But it's allowed me to, I think I've been able to cry with the poor, not for them. I've been able to cry with them. So although it's had an effect, it's almost had a healing effect in respect of, and I've thought that if, like church leaders and also politicians and stuff could cry with the poor, I thought, imagine what the world could be like, kind of what a change. But I've managed to do that. I haven't cried for them. I've been able to cry with them. And I feel that I've been going through a lot of healing in that. But it's been hard. The healing's been hard. But it's been God ministering to me as well. So we cry together, and I cry with the families, and we support the families and everything else. But it's been very healing as well. So that's been quite tough, really. The healing's been painful, I would say, but that's been quite hard. And then seeing, hungry children, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, that were hard. And the big one still is when I see old age pensioners that don't have gas and electric and stuff. And that kind of hits you a little bit as well, them kind of things. So seeing poverty in all its rawness, even in death, does have an effect on you. But with Christ, with God, there's a healing that can come from it, and you've got to allow that healing in. You can't pretend you're all right when you're not. You've got to cry when you cry, and that's a gift. I've been given a gift, so it's not a burden, and that's why I stay sane. I stay sane and I stay grounded and I stay rounded, is because I can cry with the poor. I can cry when I need to cry. I can laugh when I need to laugh, And it's really important that you don't pretend everything's all right when it's not. Because I don't pretend it's all right when I'm not. I'm having a tough week. Do you know what I mean? And I've really struggled this week. I've had a few death threats and things like that, and what have you, because there's some people who are mentally ill and things, and they see you on TV and stuff, and and it's like, so it's made me feel anxious and a bit more kind of careful about what I'm doing, but still saying God. But I don't pretend that everything's all right. I just get somebody to watch me back for a couple of weeks and be careful where I go, and and I'm all right. It kind of, I've not chose to get any kind of profile or anything. I've just kind of been given a voice to do it, but it comes with a responsibility as well to look after myself.
So much is shallow these days. Pictures, but not words. Texts that seem impersonal. Tweets rather than conversation. It can leave us all feeling rather empty. At Premier Christianity, we go deeper to bring you a thought-provoking and credible mix of theological articles, biblical interpretation, interviews, debates, and trends. Premier Christianity, online, in print, in depth. Subscribe today at premierchristianity.com.
I've not chose to get any kind of profile or anything. I've just kind of been given a voice to do it, but it comes with a responsibility as well to look after myself.
In all of this, Mick, it sounds like you've been dealing with an awful lot, what for most people would crush them. Do you feel that you have ever come to that point, or colleagues that you work with, or other ministers, have you been talking about feeling like you're at the point of burnout, or is that something that resonates with you?
No, for me, I get so much joy from seeing the good stuff. So remember kind of what I said to you, we have genuinely seen miracle after miracle, and I mean real miracles, like healing stuff and all sorts of stuff that I didn't actually, when I became a Christian, I don't think I believed in them, but I've had to see them to believe them, really. A bit like, Thomas, I've seen the miracle after miracle. So burnout's not been something. What's happened is that as the ministry's grown, we've employed people. So I've created 10 jobs, so paid jobs for people, and then voluntary work and things. So I'm probably doing less now than I were before, because that's the right thing to do, because we're bigger and we're more structured and more organised. And there's people also that do things better than me in certain areas, and I want the best for the people that we're ministering to. So there's people better than me that can do it, and they're around. Listen, go and do it. You know what I mean? And I think that I've been tired, I think was the term I'd use, where I'd almost go against myself and not rest. But in the end, I need the Sabbath for me. So it's that pulled me back. So, and the Sabbath for me isn't Sunday, it's taking a day out to spend time with God. And I was neglecting that for a long time. And I've come back to that now, where I have to respect the Sabbath, and that's been great. I've got refreshment from it, and just taking that time out. So I think I was tired, and I could have got physically burnt out, but at that point I decided to grasp the Sabbath and the meaning of what I thought the Sabbath was, which is giving the time to God.
Any other advice for sort of pastors who are maybe reaching that point of burnout?
Over this last 2 years, really, I've become more brutally honest, I would say. So I imagine myself with a TV screen on top of my head, and everybody can see everything I'm thinking. And I want that. I'm not scared of that. I pray for that, to become more authentic, and I hide nothing. And it's that. So when you're so busy and stuff, you can end up full of fear and resentment for the people you're trying to help, and because you're doing what you think they should be doing and all that rubbish. And I kind of started to see myself as getting if I pray and I close my eyes, I can see myself as clear glass, and that you can see all the muck inside me. But I want to become completely clear and completely authentic, so I don't hide anything anymore. If I feel like, I'll preach on a Sunday and say I walked around Tesco's and I felt like punching that old fella in the face in front of me because he was doing me head in, and I'm the leader of the church and stuff like that. I don't hide anything. I don't kind of I tell the truth, and I put it right out there, because it gives people permission to be who they really are, because that keeps you well. That keeps you really well, but it keeps you right with God as well.
Yeah.
And I find that most ministers and leaders, they won't do that.
Yeah.
They hide something about the character and the flaws. They hide. I don't want to hide my flaws. I want them out there. Do you know what I mean? I know what I'm like, and I want it out there, because I don't want to hold on to the sin that's in me. I want to give it to God. And the only way I can do that is to show you what it is, to show you where I'm weak in these areas. And that has been a great strength for me. It's been a great strength, and I don't have any anxiety. I don't have any fear. It completely takes it away, because if someone's going to say something about me, I've already said it first. I've already done it. Everybody knows that I'm not perfect, or I'm not, and I have problems, and I have problems like everybody else. My wife had cancer going through this, and my ex-wife died of cancer. And I can go on and on and on. I've been married 3 times. My first wife got schizophrenia and left me with 3 children when she was 30. My second wife, I had another child. She died of cancer. Got married again. She's recovering from cancer. She helps me in the ministry. So I kind of know how to cope. I'm a recovering drug addict. I'm recovering from abuse. Do you know what I mean? I know how to live my life for God. Do you know what I mean? Because I've been through enough, and I don't need to pretend I'm all right anymore. And that's what we need. Leaders need to stop pretending they're all right, or they're not flawed, and chuck the flaws out there, and people respect you a lot more. That's given me great strength, and it's stopped me burning out, and it's helped my mental health. Because I've been when I got clean off drugs and alcohol, I got sectioned on the Mental Health Act, so I've been clean for 12 years. So I've been in the psychiatric unit, kind of, that was my rehab, being in the psychiatric unit. So I protect my mental health really well, and I protect it by the honesty of how I feel. And it seems to resonate with other people. They resonate, they laugh, they get it, they're with you in it, they understand, kind of. And then they come and get around you, and you can get around them. It's when you pretend that you're okay that you've got real problems.
I'm Sam Howes, and you have been listening to the Profile Podcast. Really hope you enjoyed that interview. There's loads more where that one came from. Over 200 interviews with different Christians from all walks of life available now on the Profile Podcast, and new ones coming each and every week. If you have been enjoying these interviews, we would so appreciate it if you could take just 5 seconds to give us a rating and a review wherever you found this podcast. It helps other people to discover the show. So why not do that now? Give us a rating and a review, and we'll see you next time.